Well, if Donald Trump gets dementia, how will we know? Donald Trump's mental decline, which is more and more obvious, started from such a low level of mental processing power that it's hard to track his decline. It's from low to lower. And then there are days like today when Donald Trump asks himself out loud in public if he is allowed to appoint himself chair of the Federal Reserve. Now, it may be tiresome to hear, but we must not grow weary of making the point that no other president was ever capable of saying anything as stupid or as indicative of dementia as that. Am I allowed to appoint myself chair of the Federal Reserve? And we must not grow weary of reminding ourselves what the White House press corps would have done if Joe Biden ever said anything like that, and how big the headlines would be in the next day's print editions of the New York Times and the Washington Post and every newspaper in the country. Because if we grow weary of making the point of how singularly stupid and possibly clinically demented Donald Trump's statements are, then we will become part of the normalization process of those statements.
I agree. I mean, the only way this is going to come to an end is if we all make it come to an end.
Yes.
And we know that this administration is, powered by vengeance in some ways. If there was an Energizer Bunny powered by vengeance, it would look like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so what he's saying, I think, in part, is this notion that if you stand up, there could be consequences, but you need to accept that.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And he also stated, we're moving closer and closer towards autocracy. And Donald keeps complaining he's not a dictator, because if he were a dictator, a lot of things would be like George W. Bush said once, things would be so much easier if I were a dictator.
Yeah.
But Donald, wants to do that. And have you seen the statue with the gold hand over the crown of the Statue of Liberty yet that's in the mall? Yeah. And it says dictator approved. I saw a picture. It's very, needless to say, the White House is displeased.
Well, no.
They basically said if he were a dictator, that wouldn't be up in the mall right now.
Right. Well, I think any time that this administration has an opportunity to take a step, they take a mile when it comes to the authority of the executive. They don't believe in checks and balances. We know that. And when you have a Congress that doesn't believe in checks and balances either, it's a pretty awful scenario. This is also an administration that is defying the courts at every opportunity. So, they're trying to tell us that 1 + 1 does not equal 2.
Well, yeah, even in that hearing, I forget who questioned Hegseth on the military turning its guns on U.S. citizens, not just protesters, but here in Los Angeles, and detaining people and overstepping. And if Governor Newsom wins the lawsuit here, would he abide by the court order? And he never said he would, which frightens me.
Yeah. They've had this penchant for not stating that they will abide by court orders. In fact, when you watch, the big, beautiful bill conversation or any conversation that happens in the Senate and the House, you'll see Republicans talking about how they don't need to follow precedent. The same precedents that Biden followed and Bush followed and Clinton followed and Obama followed don't apply to this White House.
Yeah, Hegseth even said district courts shouldn't rule federal law. It's like, hi, Mififpristone would like a word. So would mask mandates like a word, thank you very much. Those were district level judges that ruled federally how we were supposed to deal with stuff.
Well, and what's exposed by all of this is the unprecedented nature of the overreach by this administration. They say, look at, they're stopping Trump more than they stopped anybody else, and they should be.
Exactly.
This administration is doing more than anyone else to blur the line between what is appropriate and not appropriate.
Exactly. Now, the Supreme Court decided an awful decision regarding transgender rights, basically. And also, the administration has decided to stop the helpline for LGBTQ plus people who might be contemplating suicide. This is really bothersome to me. I assume you feel the same way.
Well, particularly the helpline.
Yeah.
We know that LGBTQ youth who are not in supportive environments, either at school or at home, are more likely to try self-harm. And we need to do everything we can to support them. Unfortunately, this administration is trying to erase them. And the Supreme Court decision just doesn't make any sense. Look, just a few years ago, written by the conservative majority, the Supreme Court decided that it was gender discrimination to not allow men and women to enjoy the same rights as it pertains to their orientation.
Right.
In other words, if a man decides that he wants to marry a woman, he can't be told that he can't marry a man.
Right.
And so this notion that parents could pursue treatment for a child born male at birth for certain treatments, but not for a child born female at birth, and vice versa.
Right.
Under the care of a doctor's recommendation, just doesn't even stand up to its own precedent when you've got almost the same Supreme Court seated.
Yeah, I mean, there are cis girls and boys that need hormone therapy because they're either going through puberty too soon or too late, so they need that. And girls can get breast implants. Boys can get, if their breasts are too big, they can get them reduced. But you can't do that because you're assigned your sex at birth. It's not like you have a choice in the matter.
And again, we're talking about treatment under the care of a doctor and
Right.
parents. So I think it's tremendous overreach.
I do too. I think that my co-host on my show, he basically said it's the Plessy versus Ferguson rule, separate but equal.
Yeah.
In a really messed up way. And hopefully we can fight this and overturn it somehow by law or by Supreme Court people. I don't know. This is just, it's a really bad decision. It's like Dred Scott, it's like Plessy, and it's like Dobbs. These are bad decisions.
I think more and more what these types of things are going to show us is how important it is to elect the right people at the state and local level.
Right.
Because they're going to be the line that keeps state laws like this from passing in the first place.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And also, for the federal elections, presidents matter especially when it comes to the Supreme Court. And Democrats, unfortunately, for the past 20 years or so, have not paid attention to that. And this is what we get out of this.
Right.
Anyway, with regard to, because I believe 2 people in New York yesterday tried to go see a detention center and were turned away. And everybody's getting turned away from these detention centers. And 3 Democrats either have been detained or arrested. And one is now being charged with the crime against DHS for doing their job. Now, how can we help them fight this? How can we do that for them? How?
I mean, that's a great question. I think, people need to be prepared now for the November elections
Yes.
of 2026.
Sure. Yeah.
We've got a year and a half basically left to marshal the forces to win back the congressional majority. That's how you can bring some sanity to these things. There's not been, some of these committees in Congress have held not a single oversight committee meeting, oversight hearing in their committees during the entirety of this administration. That tells you a lot about the lack of acknowledgement of their responsibility to provide checks and balances on the administration. So that doesn't change until you have Democrats in control of Congress.
Yeah. Do you think we have a shot at the Senate?
I think it's tougher than the House, but you really need one of them to put the brakes on.
Right.
So I'm advising anybody, figure out what your closest flippable congressional seat is and go volunteer there. If you happen to be in a state where there's a flippable opportunity for U.S. Senate, then you're lucky. Now try and find an overlap with a congressional seat that can be flipped.
Nice.
The good thing about electing Democrats to Congress is that once they're there, the MAGA right can't remove them until the next election. They don't have to deal with recalls like people like me
You're right.
of MAGA conservatives trying to remove them from office.
Well, we have that here in California, too. We have
Right.
recall elections, which are just
Yeah.
stupid.
So, focus on what you can move. And, that means standing up to speak out. It also means getting ready for the next election.
Okay.
And you can help Carl with his...
Absolutely.
All right. If you want to support
Right.
the opposition to the recall against me, which I will be clear, I'm not worried about, but I'm keeping an eye on.
No,
Sure.
you should, yeah.
You can go to mooksforcarl.com and chip in a little bit to help us out.
Yes,
Yeah.
everybody do that. I have my Mooks for Carl shirt still. And one more thing. So, speaking of oversight, the Senate Judiciary Committee subcommittee held a hearing on the cognitive abilities of
Yep.
President Joe Biden,
Yeah.
because
It was a
that's
bust.
important.
It was a complete bust.
Why did they have Sean Spicer testify?
Yeah, he never worked for Biden.
I mean, what was the purpose of calling Sean, of all people,
Yeah.
calling Sean Spicer in? He never worked for him. Was it just a complaint about Donald? I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, there's not a lot of sense here. This is another one of those hearings that's designed because the president has basically insisted on it.
Yep.
Right.
In a certain way, you don't need a hearing about Donald Trump's decline because it's on display every time he talks.
And Durbin played, I think, a whole video of Donald prior to the start of the meeting because he's the ranking member.
Yeah.
So good for him for doing that. But it's just, seriously, people, he's out of office. He's not running again. Let him be. Let him get his cancer treatment. Let him be happy with his family. And Comer and all of them in the House, too, still trying to...
What's remarkable to me is the scrutiny that Republicans in Congress will give the honesty around Biden's diagnosis and everything else. But when they get a health report about this president having 6% body fat and being 6'3", they're like, yes, sir, we believe it.
Yeah, well, don't believe your lion eyes there,
Yeah.
Carl. Don't even think about it. Well, sir, thank you so much for being on with me. I appreciate it. So, Mooks for Carl, people, donate, help
Yes,
him
help him
keep
out.
his gig, man. We need him on that wall.
And everybody out there, don't forget this is Juneteenth, and
It
if you
is.
don't know what that is, Google it and
Yeah.
observe it today because it's an important
It's very important.
recognition we have to make as a country.
Sure is.
Absolutely.
Hey, are you traveling this summer? Will you leave instructions for your house sitter, the name and number of your vet, maybe, the code to your alarm system? Think about the steps you take to prepare for vacation, and you'll get a sense of what goes into a knockbox. Just go to theknockbox.com, use the code Stephanie. Knockbox is a complete system that helps you organize all of your accounts, possessions, and estate plans for your next of kin. Each knockbox, that's Knockbox, comes with a comprehensive checklist that helps ensure you add everything they'll need to manage your estate when you are gone. From your funeral directives to your insurance policies, even the keys to your storage unit, the Knockbox helps you organize it all. If you've got a household, you need a Knockbox. Right now, Stephanie Miller listeners save 16% off the Knockbox of your choice. Just go to theknockbox.com/Stephanie. That's theknockbox.com/Stephanie to get 16% off. Stay calm, get organized today.